So puppetry. I feel that any good presentation should probably start with an awful definition from Webster's dictionary. I say that very much tongue-in-cheek. So I want to ask, does anyone know a good definition of puppetry? Anyone at all? No? Okay. Well, when I looked it up, I was surprised that we define puppetry this way: to bring life to an inanimate object not inherent to its own mechanism, which is really a highfalutin way of saying moving things in ways they don't normally move, which is all fine and it's very true and very valid, but it's also very academic and very stale. Puppeteers have a far more romantic view on what puppetry is and what puppetry could be. We like to brag that it is the all-inclusive art form because it combines many different individual artistic disciplines in order to find success. For instance, the puppet alone, I have one here, is a work of sculpture. To get this sculpture, you need to know design, which means you also need to know illustration. And once you have that design, you need to be able to be a good enough craftsman to be able to build it yourself. To then bring life to this guy, you'll see him in a bit later. To bring life to that character, you need to know acting, singing, dancing, a lot of movement. And it also helps to be able to manipulate your voice in order to give your character that own distinct sound. Frog in my throat. Anyway, bad joke. There'll be a lot of them. But then we move on to the third and really my favorite part of puppetry, which is the story element, storytelling. Being able to, once you've created this character, to put it in an environment where it can give your audience exposition, climax, and resolution. We're spoiled very much so today by our computers and laptops, iPads, iPhones, iPods, whatever, because this is where we get a lot of our story, a lot of our gossip, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. You know, we could get television shows and Hulu and YouTube and all that stuff. Before that, it was the television. And even before the TV, we had the illustrated storybook. But before all of this stuff, we had the puppet. And the puppet was our primary means of illustrating story and bringing story to life. Not too many people realize, but the art of puppetry is about as old as storytelling itself. And it dates back to civilizations and families gathering around the fire to pass down from one generation to the next story and canon, whether it be religious, fictional, or historical. It's in the same proud and rich tradition that puppeteers of today, myself included, try to perform, to move their audiences both emotionally and affectionately. At this point, I want to address the elephant in the room, or maybe, because it's puppetry, the snuffleupagus in the room. It's very hard to talk about puppetry, at least in a contemporary setting, at least in America, without also talking about the Muppets. They've become very much the gold standard by which we judge a lot of other contemporary puppetry. And there's a very good reason for this. The Muppets did a lot of things right. Jim Henson and Frank Oz and all the people who founded it back in the 50s. But the reason it was so successful was because so much of what the Muppets did was rooted in the traditions of puppets that came before it. Instead of performing around a fire for your family, they were in 120 countries in 50 different languages, all in prime time. So they had a much larger audience to make a much larger span. Excuse me for a moment. So like I said, they were very much rooted in in the tradition of puppets that came before them. So in talking about puppetry today to you guys here, I guess I want to kind of talk about puppetry and storytelling through the lens of the Muppets because I'm most comfortable talking about them. I think everyone here kind of has the best sense of who these guys are versus maybe Punch and Judy. And I appreciate if anyone even knows who Punch and Judy is. Just show of hands. Okay, cool, awesome. So anyways, I'll share sort of my experience with the Muppets and then try to apply it to the grander puppetry as a whole. I right now am a Muppet fan, of course. I'm 21 years and 4 months old, which means I've been a Muppet fan for about 22 years and 1 month, if I added the 9 properly. Another bad joke. But my family actually remembers the very first time I encountered a Muppet. And this was back in 1991. I'd like to share the story with you because it really illustrates well some of the magnetism and the power puppetry can have. So 1991, little Cam Garrity is about 4 or 5 months old down here. And my parents and my grandparents wanted to take me to the mall for the very first time. I'm my parents' oldest son, and on my mom's side, I'm the oldest grandkid. So taking a newborn baby anywhere was a really fresh experience for everyone involved. And they didn't really know what to do. We got some new clothes, tried some new food. And about an hour into the trip, my mom and my grandma went off to go to the bathroom or something. So I was left alone with my grandfather. What do you do with a newborn baby but you take him to the toy store, right? And we're going along through the mall, and the instant we passed the threshold of the KB Toys, I started to cry. I was inconsolable. I was going downright ape. And my grandfather couldn't settle me down. So what does he do? He tries to pull off every toy from the shelf until he could find one that would appease me. So we tried, teddy bears, stuffed animals, rattles. When my grandfather tells the story, he says he was even so desperate as to try Barbie dolls. Fortunately, that did not work, or else this would be a very different presentation. But finally, we made our way over to the Sesame Street section, and he grabbed this Big Bird doll off the shelf. The instant I got this thing in my arms, I was quiet. I was silent. I was downright content. I had made my new best friend. A few months later, I started talking. After the obligatory first words, which were da-da, a very close second was da-doid, which meant Big Bird. Later on, I found out that Carol Spinney, the performer of both Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, him and I actually share a birthday, which I just think is really cool. I'm weird that way. A side note about him, he's been performing Big Bird and Oscar since day one on Sesame Street, so for 43 years. He's now 77 years old, and only comes into Sesame Street about 4 or 5 days a season. When I was there last year, I was fortunate enough to be there on one of his days, and I was able to share this story with him. Also, to this day, Big Bird remains my all-time favorite Muppet, or maybe I should say Dodwood. But I guess the question I have after sharing the story and thinking about it is why, or maybe more importantly, how. How do we have this attraction to the Muppets? Because it's not just me and like the 2% of really crazy Muppet fans who go nuts about this kind of stuff. It's the lay people, as that 2% like to call you. So how does this happen? There's a definite magnetism that these characters have. And by harnessing what makes the Muppets successful and applying it to puppetry, we get to make our own success. So I've narrowed it down to kind of 2 big reasons of why Muppets and puppets are successful. The first is that the Muppets are real. Now, I don't mean this in any kind of weird or schizophrenic way, but it's true. The Muppets are real. They are physical. They are tactile. You can reach out and touch them, and that alone registers with us as humans on some sort of subliminal level. Let's review a social script for a minute. If you were going to have a conversation with someone, what do? You look at them in the eye, you talk back and forth with them, and at the end of that talk, you either shake their hand or give them a hug. You could do this with a Muppet. Now, granted, there'd be like a 6-foot-tall guy under the table, and that could be a little weird. But once you got over that initial shock, it could happen. If Kermit the Frog was in the room right now, I would sit down at the table, I would look him in the eye, he would look back. I would start to talk with him, he would have something to say. And at the end of that talk, he'd be there, open-armed, ready to give me a hug. As a side note, Elmo only shakes hands. I learned that the hard way. Another bad joke. Anyway, so one of the examples that a lot of the Muppeteers use is the scenario of the Today Show couch. We've all seen the Today Show. Celebrities go on and plug whatever new project they're working on. And and then they sit down on the couch and talk to Matt Lauer or whoever. So if Toy Story 4 was going to come out next month, which would be awesome, who would sit on the couch speaking with Matt Lauer? Would it be Buzz Lightyear, or would it be Tim Allen?
Tim Allen.
Thank you. Because why? Tim Allen is real. Buzz Lightyear, as great as the character is exists in a digital realm. He is computer data. He's zeros and ones. If you did come on the Today Show, you would know it was all pre-scripted and pre-rehearsed and all that kind of stuff. It would feel stale. In the same way that the Muppets register with us for being real, there's also a bit of a distance when we watch a Pixar character because we know that it's not something tangible. I'm going to stop picking on Pixar because I really do love these characters. Pirates of the Caribbean. God forbid we ever got another Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Who would sit on the couch? Would it be Captain Jack Sparrow, or would it be Johnny Depp? Of course it would be Johnny Depp. We want to ask Johnny Depp how much of a diva Keira Knightley is on set. We want to talk to him about what it's like to bring that character to life. Because when the movie's over, we don't need to see Jack Sparrow again until the next movie or whatever. Johnny Depp is the hardworking, trained actor who brings Jack Sparrow to life. Now, using the same exact logic, not changing a thing, when the Muppet movie, the new one, came out last November, we would have all been really, really, really excited to see Eric Jacobson on the Today Show, right? No one, okay. What about Matt Vogel? Bill Beretta? Dave Goelz? David Rudman? No, because no one cares who David Rudman is, except me and the 2% and maybe David Rudman's mother. Maybe. No one cares how hard it was for Steve Whitmire to keep his arm up in the air and during all the takes and shoots. We want Steve Whitmire sewn into the Today Show couch with his hand through the cushion performing Kermit the Celebrity, who we all know and love. Because it's Kermit we want to talk to about what it's like on set. How much of a diva is Miss Piggy? How is their love life going? And this is crazy. We're talking to a sock, but we all eat it up and we all love it because it's Kermit the Frog. And it's a pig in a bad wig. But we eat it all up. The Muppets give us an excuse, and puppetry just in general gives us an excuse to believe in a fantasy that exists in our real world. And this is really powerful. And this is what puppeteers do all the time, is harness this fantasy that we can interact with in a real space. The number 2 in reasons the Muppets are successful. To watch the Muppets is to become a Muppet. And again, this sounds really strange. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. Excuse me. All right. Who here, show of hands, has seen the original Muppet movie from 1976? Wonderful. Well, for those of you who didn't raise your hand, or for those of you who maybe forgot, the Muppet movie does not start off with Kermit on the log playing the banjo singing Rainbow Connection. It actually starts off with all the Muppets gathering into the movie theater to watch that movie and see it all together. And in this first 5 minutes, the establishing shots, you're sitting down with Kermit the Frog and his nephew Robin and and Fozzie and Miss Piggy. We're seeing the world through their white and black googly eyes. We're seeing everything from their own perspective, and you're becoming one of them. Same thing every week on The Muppet Show. This is what the audience on The Muppet Show looked like. You don't see a single human in there because they want to give you at home the opportunity to sit in that audience. And again, this is really powerful. Returning back to Sesame Street. I have not seen all 4,344 episodes of Sesame Street that have ever been recorded. I'm just not a big enough fan. But of the ones I have seen, they've all started a little bit like this. Hi there, I'm Ernie. Welcome to Sesame Street. Rubber Ducky and I were just about to have a play date together. Hey, do you want to join us? Well, grab your pretend rubber ducky and we'll all have a play date together. Not only do we allow the Muppets to enter into our space on the Today Show or the Oscars or cooking shows or whatever, Dancing with the Stars. But they invite us into their space too. It's a continual give and take that has been going on for 50 years and will continue for a lot longer because they really are this institution. We're there for each other to learn about the world. And we teach each other all different kinds of things. We learn how to laugh. We learn how to sing, how to dance, how to time a joke and how to take criticism for that joke. We learn how to rock out, man. How to perform death-defying stunts. How to fall in love. How not to fall in love. How to be a friend. How to cope with death. And how to live in spite of that death. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really easy to write off the Muppet characters as socks or fake or whatever, to not buy into that illusion. But it's a heck of a lot easier to tuck your 4-month-old son in bed at night with his new Big Bird stuffed animal that your father bought him and realize that these characters are real and they have some sort of sustainable good that can last with you a lifetime.